Y'all ready for this?
Yeah.
Welcome to Sports Kid Drama Kid. I'm Jim. I'm the Sports Kid.
I'm Andi. I'm the drama kid.
Andy, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Never start like that.
No, you don't.
No, I'm doing good. I am singing songs from Starlight Express from our recent Patreon episode.
Sorry if this is TMI, but you were in the shower earlier and I heard, "Hi, I'm a starlight."
Yeah, man, it's sticking with me for its absurdity.
Yeah, for those who may not understand, our most recent subscriber episode that just came out, Jim first told me about the current Shohei Ohtani scandal, and then I told him about the evergreen Patty Lupone and Andrew Lloyd Webber feud.
Yes.
So you got to see some of Starlight Express.
Yes, I did. Today, though, we're going to go to a basketball story. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's the NBA playoffs. It's my favorite time of the year.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's basketball every night. Important basketball every night. And
basketball where they're like really going for it.
Yeah, they're actually trying because the season's too long. So they only try at the end. Mm. So today we're going to talk about Phil Jackson and his book, Sacred Hoops, which I read for this episode to get away from the screens for a little bit and sort of wanted to use that as the backbone for this. And then it's not just a book report. That is going to be the guide.
Essentially, all our episodes are basically book reports.
It's basically book report. It's not just a book report. Like, I'm going to go through the chapters as sort of my headings, but I also did a little bit of, as corporate world would say, double clicking.
Great. Does that just mean like going down a rabbit hole?
Yeah, going down a rabbit hole. Like, I'm like, oh, here's a thing you mentioned in this book. Let's look into that a little bit. So there's a few good ones of those,
Gotcha.
I think, that we'll go through. But we're going to use the book as a guide. And it's also one of those books, Sacred Hoops is, that I feel like has sort of transcended sports. And it's become sort of like a, have you read Sacred Hoops? It teaches you things about the world.
I can tell you for a fact it has transcended sports because this is my copy of
this is
that I purchased.
And you didn't read it.
I did not read it.
I saw it on the shelf to get the idea for this episode.
Yep.
I read it.
I didn't read it. I don't remember when I bought it. I'm assuming it was around the time that The Last Dance was on ESPN, which I also didn't watch, by the way. It was just people were talking a lot about the Bulls, the Chicago Bulls in the 90s and how they were like a dominant team and Phil Jackson was their coach. And Phil Jackson, I believe, was into like, I mean, you're going to get into this meditation and like Eastern thought. And, you know, every white lady has a time in her 20s.
I feel like every white man does.
Yeah. Where, you know, you're just like, my life is not the way I want it to be. Should I go to therapy? Should I try meds? Maybe I'll just buy a self-help book and maybe I'll be a different person after I read it.
Yeah.
Haven't read it yet though. So,
So first, I'm just going to introduce you to Phil Jackson and sort of his basketball stuff. We're going to get into it all because this is a basketball book that also talks about other things in his life. But I just want to kind of outline how important he is to the world of basketball.
Sure. Before
we go into the book, because the book only talks about his time with the Bulls mostly.
Okay.
And before that. So Phil Jackson won the NBA title 2 times as a player with the Knicks.
I didn't know he played.
Yeah, in 1970 and 1973. We'll get further into that because he talks all about that in the book. He won 6 championships with the Bulls and 5 more with the Lakers. Just an insane accomplishment.
He continued after the Bulls. Okay.
Yeah. He was also the coach of like the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. Like he was the coach of the Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, you know, Bulls teams and the Shaq and Kobe Lakers teams.
Those are some iconic figures in basketball that even people who don't know sports know. Yeah. So that's like pretty amazing.
He's the coach of some of the best. For a detailed, comprehensive look at his runs with the Bulls and the Lakers, there's the MJ Last Dance documentary, which you talked about, that just does an incredible job of telling the story with all the visuals and all the documentary footage. So hearing about Phil's and Michael's sort of championship runs through that is probably the best way to get that info.
Okay.
Like we're going to talk about some of that stuff, but I can't do that justice.
Sure.
That's years of work there. And then the Lakers have a doc that I haven't watched called Legacy that's also about sort of their time.
Gotcha.
And Phil is important in that too. We will obviously talk about Phil Jackson's basketball career, but we're going to do that through his 1995 book, Sacred Hoops.
It's like a book club episode.
Yeah. So the first chapter is called Second Coming, and the book opens in the team room at the Berto Center. I guess that's the Bulls training facility.
Okay.
In 1995. And Phil Jackson, the author of the book and coach of the Bulls at the time, tells us how he decorated the team room with Native American imagery, totems, and artifacts as a reminder to his team that they were all on a sacred quest together. This is a room away from the outside world where the spirit of the team takes form, he says.
Is it just like a conference room?
No, it's like a locker room.
Oh, it's a
like
locker room.
Sort of locker room, team room, but he's adorned it in a way that he wants to make it like their sacred sort of place. Phil does this thing where he starts the story in the middle and the book opens with Michael Jordan coming back from his early retirement, which is a thing that happened when he went to play baseball for the White Sox.
Oh, yeah.
Briefly.
This was addressed in the seminal movie Space Jam.
Yes. Yeah. So the return of Jordan caused issues within the team initially because they were all in awe of him and wanted to sit back and watch him be the best in the world. However, Phil reminds us that a great player can only do so much on his own. And no matter how breathtaking his one-on-one moves are, the ethos and heart of everything Jackson believes in is the team. So Michael Jordan comes to Phil in the book after he has a 55-point game to beat the Knicks, asking Phil to make sure that the team actually helps him next time. Because after winning the 3 championships, Michael knows now that he needs his team. So it's kind of like, hey, we're going to show you how Michael has sort of learned the truth from Phil right at the beginning, and then we'll go into how they got there.
I see.
Second chapter is called Journey of 1,000 Miles, Start with One Breath. And Phil takes us back to his college days at the University of North Dakota, where he first learned a key life lesson that he would apply to coaching and to life in general. He was a very good pitcher, a baseball pitcher, for North Dakota, where he went to college, and he like tore his shoulder while pitching. His brother was a psych major in college and suggested that he do some positive mantra type work. So he told himself that he would just allow himself to perform naturally, not force anything, and he threw a lot better and more accurately than he ever had. And sort of this reminded him of the importance of positive thinking and the power of visualization.
Okay.
Andi, have you done any visualization work?
Yeah, probably too much. And to be honest with you, the results have been mixed. I have had a history of, prior to auditions, improv shows, any kind of performance, employing a lot of techniques to make me feel like I can actually like do the best job I possibly can. But I got to tell you, nothing silences the mind quite like Zoloft does. But prior to that, I tried to do like meditating, positive thinking. I tried I paid $60 for like almost like a hypnosis meditation thing that was like supposedly going to make me more magnetic as a person. There's also like you can put your body in like a power pose so that you feel more powerful. I don't know. These are all they're not useful. There was no quiet force that could quite overcome the loudness in my head.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
We'll probably get into it a little bit too. I've also sort of dabbled. In fact, reading this book made me buy a meditation cushion.
Yes, you did.
Because I used to meditate a lot more, and I was like, gotta get back to it.
Yeah.
Every time you read a book like this, it's sort of a reminder.
I'm not knocking meditation. Meditation is great. I think that myself and a lot of people use positive thinking, meditation, any sort of mindfulness technique. We probably try to use it incorrectly. Like I always want it to be like a quick fix to calm me down, and that's not really what it is. Yeah.
So in a section called The Battleground of the Mind, he talks about how his super religious mom always told him that an idle mind was susceptible to evil thoughts.
Oh boy.
The idle mind is the devil's playground, as the saying goes.
Heard it.
So she always wanted him to be reading Bible passages, memorizing Bible stuff. So both of his parents worked and were members of and everything of a Pentecostal church. So his entire life was like steeped in religion because his parents were also working at the church. I think his dad was a minister, like an actual preacher, and his mom was somehow involved.
Okay, so he's really in there.
Yeah. He remembers not being able to find his parents one day, convinced that they had been raptured before him. That's how serious
God
they were.
Oh no. That's your first thought?
Yeah. And I'm going to go on a little tangent here because the religion that they were a part of was called Assemblies of God.
Okay.
And I was like, I gotta go in here. So here's a little video from a YouTube channel called Ready to Harvest that does little explainers on different religions. And I'm just going to play this little 2-minute clip about Assemblies of God.
Okay.
So what is this Christian denomination? They are evangelical. They believe in the Bible as the infallible word of God and that a person should have a conversion experience where they trust in Christ and repent. They are Pentecostal, meaning that after a person has this salvation experience, they should seek for a second experience called the baptism with the Holy Spirit. You can know you received it when you speak in tongues, that is, speak in a language you don't know. They teach that tongues could be other human languages, but they don't have to be. Additionally, all the other spiritual gifts like prophecy, words of knowledge, and healing are still available to the present. AG began in 1914 in the U.S. as a split from the majority black Pentecostal denomination, the Church of God in Christ, and in 1988 the World Fellowship was formed, making Assemblies of God the largest Pentecostal Christian denomination in the world. They teach believers baptism by immersion and the Lord's Supper, which is commonly open to all believers. The official teaching of the church is that there is no human evolution, but Adam and Eve were historical people created directly by God. On end times, they are officially premillennial, and most churches teach a pre-tribulation rapture. They oppose abortion, euthanasia, and same-sex marriage, and the U.S. denomination officially is opposed to drinking of alcohol, too. Both men and women can serve as ministers in the church. Unlike Holiness Pentecostals, they don't teach a required entire sanctification experience prior to Spirit baptism.
I appreciated how to the point that was.
So good. A lot of pretty fucked up, dare I say, Christian things in there.
Well, but you can be a minister as a woman.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sure that it's great for all women.
Yeah, that was harrowing.
Yeah. It's like they said, a Pentecostal Christian denomination founded in 1914. It had nearly 3 million members as of 2022, the 9th largest Christian denomination and 2nd largest Pentecostal, as they said.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That whole list that was like, okay, so first you need to do this. And then once you've done that, you got to do this. Like there's always a next step and it feels very like
MLM.
Yes, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
It feels very MLM. It's like, okay, well, you've done your communion, but now you have to be baptized. And once you're baptized, you have to get to the speaking in tongues level. And then you can know the prophecy after the speaking in tongues level.
Yep. This actually is reminding me of, I was in college as a freshman and I had like tons of friends in my dorm freshman year because I was just meeting everybody. And one of them who I did really like, but he got involved in Amway.
Oh.
And he brought us all to an Amway meeting saying there would be free drinks and stuff. And we went there and it was the weirdest thing.
What is Amway again?
It's like a peer-to-peer MLM.
Okay.
Like basically they have all these products, but you can't sell them until you become a member.
Okay.
And they're great products that everyone will want to buy. And then you buy the products.
Yeah.
And then you've already given the person you bought them from money. And now you have to go and sell those.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just... the only way you sell them is getting another person in and you sell them your goods that they're going to go sell and make money.
Yep. It's literally a pyramid scheme. My association with this is just, there was a period of time when LuLaRoe, this has already been well documented. And
we watched that doc.
Yeah. But I do remember getting some messages on Facebook from people I hadn't spoken to since high school that are like, do you like these fun pattern leggings? Also, do you have $10,000 to buy a bunch of your own leggings and sell them out of your garage?
Wow. Yeah. So Assemblies of God was founded initially by a guy named Charles Parham.
Okay.
He was a leading figure in the early development of AG. By 1900, he concluded, based on his study of the Bible, that glossolalia, aka speaking in tongues, was the evidence of receiving baptism with the Holy Spirit. While other people had claimed to speak in tongues before Parham, he was the first to connect glossolalia with Spirit baptism. His apostolic faith movement was strongest in the southwest of Missouri and southeast Kansas, and he established several congregations around Kansas.
Okay. I don't mean to offend anyone, but like, can't you just fake speaking in tongues?
Yeah.
I've always thought this. I'm like, it would be really easy to fake it, right?
Yeah, it's faked.
Like, I feel bad because I don't want to like, if someone's really having like an important religious experience, whatever, but like, I don't know. How would you know if it was real or not? Like,
Yeah, well, if you just said it.
I know, but like, it's classic guy who wants to be in charge of a religion, classic like cult leader type that's like, everybody else thinks they've been speaking in tongues, but I speak in tongues. It's like, all right.
In 1905, Parham moved his headquarters to Houston, Texas, and opened a Bible training school. So there were a bunch of sort of scandals early on within his church, like sexual misconduct type things. And then opponents of Parham's movement, whether they made it up or not, accused him of sodomy. And ran him out of his own church. So apparently it was like a Salem witch trials level of like, oh my God, this guy committed sodomy and his religion is corrupt and stuff like that. And they ended up like killing several people involved in it and stuff like that, like Salem witch trials style. By 1910, 3 years later, the center of the Pentecostal movement, it sort of died down and moved from LA to Chicago, Illinois. Actually. Yeah. The two most important Pentecostal congregations in Chicago were the Stone Church and the North Avenue Mission.
Okay.
Both had contacts with his movement. And then I looked up that there's actually a Greek organization associated with Assemblies of God, like on student campuses.
Oh.
Like there's like all the fraternities, sororities. There's one called Chi Alpha, and it's like the Assemblies of God co-ed fraternity sorority student org, and as of 2022 it operated on 275 campuses.
Really?
Yeah. So Chi Alpha XA or whatever also is sometimes known as Students for Christ, and also known as Chi Alpha Christian Fellowship. Yeah.
Okay, where there's a kegger at the Students of Christ house. Like, what are you guys doing tonight? I heard that there's like a party happening at like one of the fraternity houses.
Oh shit, no way.
Yeah.
They got like a keg and stuff? Like...
Yeah. It's like a big kegger. Yeah, it's actually like my frat. It's the Students for Christ.
Okay. Is there gonna be like chicks there?
Yeah, all kinds of chicks, righteous chicks, some ordained female ministers.
Okay. What kind of beer?
Juice.
We're not going to go to that.
It's little Dixie cups
We're going to
full
go to
of
Brad's party.
apple juice.
Yeah, and we don't need to go on and on about this, but the Assemblies of God and Chi Alpha are not great. They are one of the biggest opponents of homosexuality in the United States still to this day. One last little Assemblies of God Chi Alpha factoid: Carson Wentz, the former quarterback for the Eagles and Commanders and bumped around.
The guy who kind of looks like Prince Harry.
Yeah. He also went to school in North Dakota and was in Assemblies of God.
Oh, no.
And was in Chi Alpha in college.
Oh, no.
So I don't know if he still is, but interesting North Dakota ties.
Good to note.
Back to Phil. So Phil got older, and in his teen years, he began to have doubts about his faith because he wasn't able to speak in tongues at church. And he started to think maybe everyone was just making it up.
Oh, it's the saddest children's book ever. Like the little boy who couldn't speak in tongues.
Oh my God. Thankfully, Phil had basketball to turn to, and he grew from 6'6" to 6'8" in college and was recruited to play basketball at North Dakota. Well, he was also playing baseball. He immersed himself in the counterculture, or what they had of one at UND, he said. And some of his teammates encouraged him to think again about his religious upbringing. He said he had a lot of catching up to do on culture, music, and politics because he had zero of that growing up.
It was probably like three guys who all like dressed in all black with like turtlenecks and like read beat poetry and smoked weed.
Yeah. Experimented with Zen.
Yes,
as we'll figure
exactly.
out here. He got married to his first wife, Maxine. He got drafted by the Knicks after college.
Okay.
The Knicks coach picked him up at the airport when he was drafted, and someone threw a rock off an overpass. He details this in the book, crushing the windshield. And when he saw nobody was hurt, his coach who picked him up said, "That's New York City, Phil. If you can handle that, you'll do just fine." And this is where he learned the lesson: don't let anger or heavy objects thrown from overpasses cloud the mind. Is what he said.
Welcome to New York.
Yep. Yeah. He learned several other coaching/life lessons from Red Holzman, the coach of the time. Like, awareness is everything. The power of we is stronger than the power of me. These sort of cliches that he did find actual meaning in, though. Then Phil was injured after landing really hard on his heels, and he herniated a disc. He needed spinal surgery that left him out for the better part of 2 seasons. That's crazy. Landing on your heels so hard that it like shocks.
It like jostles your whole spine.
Your
like,
spine.
oof.
Yeah. This sent him into a moment of self-discovery and guilt. He noticed how strained his marriage was because they moved to New York, and he felt guilty about not spending time with his family while playing and traveling for basketball. And just general like Bible guilt.
I've heard that's pretty strong.
Oh, yeah. So here's just a couple little highlights so you can see Phil on the Knicks.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's like a skinny, lanky forward.
Yeah. Got that bushy hair.
Very 70s.
Yeah.
The next chapter is called If You Meet the Buddha in the Lane, Feed Him the Ball. Phil gets a divorce, and he moves into a loft above an auto repair shop in Chelsea in New York.
Oh, he's like really reinventing himself.
Yeah. He befriended the guy who rented him the apartment. His name was Hakeem. He was a Muslim who grew up Catholic, and they had a lot of discussions about faith and spirituality and became friends. So he befriended his
Nice.
Landlord.
Nice.
Around this time, Phil starts doing yoga, studying Eastern religion. Similar to what you're saying, he gets a divorce, moves in above an auto shop. He's meditating.
Oh, man. The divorce to yoga pipeline is solid.
This is where he found Zen. He gravitated to it because of the clearing of the thoughts, not adding more things to memorize and understand, similar to what he grew up with. Instead, the understanding would come from within by getting your mind to do nothing. The meditation he started doing consisted of sitting on a pillow and staring down with eyes open, focusing on the breath. Sort of classic meditation. He said he applied sort of the Zen stuff to basketball, and it helped him to stay in the moment and only do what he could, not try to be someone that he wasn't. And those are all principles he started to live by. He likes how Zen is about mental clarity, but also compassion for others and yourself. Compassion is not something often talked about in basketball, but he saw that it was necessary for good teams. And I'll quote here, "Pro basketball is a macho sport. Many coaches worried about showing any sign of weakness tend to shut down emotionally and ostracize players who aren't meeting their expectations. This can have a disturbing ripple effect on the players that undermines team unity."
Yeah, I mean, when I started dating you and started watching sports with you, I remember specifically watching baseball, and like there's a close up on the pitcher and he's like about to pitch, and like I was just sitting there thinking like, I feel like they don't talk enough in sports about like the mental aspect of like all this pressure is on you, all the attention is on you, and you just have to execute one thing that you have been like training your whole life to be able to do. And like, I don't know. For me, it just sort of felt like when I started watching sports with you, I was like, I feel like I want to know more about like the internal struggle and the drama and like how are people like focusing their attention and their energy. And then instead you like get on ESPN and Pat McAfee is like, that dude's huge.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
That is a dog.
I have warmed a bit to Pat McAfee in recent days, but okay.
So in 1978, Phil got traded to the New Jersey Nets, but the coach didn't see much playing time for him and asked him to step down and stay around as sort of a player coach.
Okay, so he was already sort of known for being like a personality hire.
Yeah,
basically.
well, cerebral basketball guy too. And
but like clearly other people liked having him around.
yeah.
And he felt important to the team even if he wasn't playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Phil basically has a Hoosiers here. The head coach doesn't want to coach sometimes, so he gets thrown in to coach. So he gets kind of practice runs as a coach and player, and he would also sort of pop in as a player once in a while.
I see.
If they needed him. The next chapter is called Experiments in the Cockroach Basketball League. Phil gets hired to coach a team called the Albany Platoons.
Oh.
They were part of the Continental Basketball Association, which was an offshoot feeder league of the time for the NBA. He was hired mid-season. The team was 8-17, and the players hated the last coach and basically ran him out. So not a great situation to come into as a new coach, but a perfect opportunity to practice his Zen mindset and try out some things on the court without anyone really seeing them play or him coach.
It was like a low stakes environment for him to like try stuff.
Yeah, and I think he really liked that. He wanted to make a team that was selfless. That was like his main goal. He wanted to like embody the Zen mindset in a basketball team. So he made everyone have the same salary and played almost exactly the same amount of time.
Oh, wow.
The entire squad. So that was a big part. He tried to use everyone and keep everyone engaged, even if they were only playing a little bit. He would play like almost everyone he could in a game.
I mean, that's kind of cool. And we talk about this a lot when we talk about like our experiences growing up and like kids playing sports. And I always make the point, whether we're talking about kids playing sports or kids in theater, what have you, I'm like, they're kids. Just try to let everybody have a good experience and walk away not feeling traumatized.
Yeah. And in this case, maybe play better as a team because everyone respects everyone because everyone gets a shot.
Right. I mean, it would be very hard if you're a bench player, I imagine, or a bench player who wants to be more than a bench player, to watch other people continue to play knowing that like there's probably no chance I'm going to get on the court at all during this game.
Yeah.
And like that doesn't make you feel good about your fellow teammates.
No. Yeah. It really takes you out of it. Like having actually done that and just sat on benches in high school, it's really demoralizing. You just feel like even if your team's winning, that you're...
It also just must feel like an enormous amount of pressure when you do get the chance.
Oh my God. Especially in baseball, I'd get to pinch hit a couple times, even though I wasn't playing for our really good high school freshman team when I played. And it was so nerve wracking because we'd be up 10 and I would get to play. And then it's like, oh, you better be able to hit this. Our team's dominating. You better be able to also dominate. And it's kind of a lot of pressure because if you don't do well in your opportunities, then you're never going to get to play.
And also there's like the social aspect because it's in front of people that you're going to school with. Like I just remember feeling this way in gym class too, of like, I want to prove the people who like had to pick me for their team. I want to prove to them that I can do it.
Yeah. Also in this chapter, he sort of tells the story about bonding with that team and how that really did work and how everyone sort of rallied around the we instead of me. And he told the story of riding around the Northeast in a van and bonding with his players because they had to travel around like that. It was a very low budget league and how that actually helped them on the court.
Honestly, sometimes the smallest, most low budget thing you're involved with is where you end up making some of like the fondest memories and like really kind of growing into like who you are as a person.
Yeah. So a little tangent here on the Continental Basketball Association.
Okay.
It was founded on April 23rd, 1946 under its previous name, the Eastern Pennsylvania Basketball League.
Oh, hello, Pennsylvania.
It went on to bill itself as the world's oldest professional basketball league since its founding predated the NBA by 2 months. The league fielded 6 franchises, 5 of which were in Pennsylvania: Allentown, Hazleton, Lancaster, Reading, and Wilkes-Barre.
Reading.
Okay.
And Wilkes-Barre.
The 6th team, Binghamton, was located in New York, but moved to Pottsville in Pennsylvania mid-season.
This is funny because these are all towns that I recognize in Pennsylvania. And then my mom actually went to college in Binghamton, New York.
Wow.
Interesting.
Really interesting. So in 1948, the league was renamed to the Eastern Professional Basketball League, added other franchises in New Jersey, Delaware, other places around there.
Hell yeah, tri-state area.
Yeah. From the 50s through the 60s, many NBA teams had unofficial quotas on the number of black players on their teams. So many players joined other leagues, including this one, because there was like a sort of like quota on race still in the NBA.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, it's fucked up. According to the Wikipedia, the league was fast and physical, often played in tiny smoke-filled gyms across the northeastern U.S.
Smoke-filled because everyone's smoking cigarettes?
Yep. Ripping cigarettes. Actually, our friend Max sent me this on TikTok, and I've seen it going around. There's a lot of photos from those times in NBA games, and it looks like really cool and old and blue in the background. And the blue is cigarette smoke. You couldn't get that nowadays because it's killing people.
No.
Yeah.
And no fog machine, no theatrical fog machine could do it justice.
During the 80s and 90s, the NBA relationship with the CBA grew to the point where dozens of former CBA stars found their way onto NBA rosters, including Tim Legler, who people might recognize from NBA Analysis on the channels, John Starks, good player for the Knicks, Phil Jackson as the coach, obviously, the Patroons, Bill Musselman and Eric Musselman, two other good college basketball coaches also coached there. Just, quite a few coaches got their start there. George Karl, who would go on to coach the Bucks and the Nuggets and stuff, also coached there. So,
cool.
Yeah, this was like a good training opportunity for coaches, but also players at the time.
Nice.
There were also some interesting sort of rules and innovations that they tried, and some of them stuck in the NBA. They did like a point system like soccer, where if you won, you got a certain amount of points. If you lost, toward your season record?
Toward
your season record. So instead of like just the record, it was like points based. Like wins and losses would like give you different.
I mean, that's more incentivizing for sure.
Yeah. The way that it worked was actually there was a point given for each quarter in which you were winning. So you could get like points for winning 3 quarters of the game.
Even if you don't win the game.
Even if you don't win the game. Yeah.
I mean, I like the validation of that. I feel like I want that like in my like day-to-day life of like, you haven't achieved the goal yet, but you're still on the way. Good for you. You get a point.
For a few years in the early days, the CBA offered a money-back guarantee, returning a patron's money if before the second quarter they wanted to leave.
Okay, that's awesome.
That's crazy.
That's awesome. I wish they had that for theater.
You could go and be like, not for me.
You go up to the poor box office associate at intermission and you're like, I just don't like it. Can I have my money back so I can go home?
That's amazing. Like, that's awful, especially for theater.
Yeah,
but like,
it's not a good idea.
So many people would do it.
And to be clear, I think I've only walked out of like 2 productions at intermission, and one was with.
We walked out of one. It was a musical.
Don't say any more information.
Okay. It was not very good.
No, it was fine. I think it was just you and I would just. I feel bad. I don't like walking out of shows, but like sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to be like, you know what? I gave them my money. I gave them my financial support. I gave them 1 act's worth of my time. And now I need to go.
Yes. No amount of overpriced concessions will get me through another 2 hours. A couple of little fun things that they sort of introduced to the world of basketball in the CBA while it was around. They did a ton of those like $1 million super shot things at halftime with people
like
shooting
contests.
For contests. That was a big thing. They took stats on the amount of dunks people had, which they do now in the NBA. They also were sort of like the testing ground for breakaway rims, which is what it is now. When you like dunk, it goes down. Before it was just a solid piece of like steel.
And the reason for it being better to be breakaway is
people not getting hurt.
Oh, people got hurt that way. I guess
if you
that
go
makes
up
sense.
and you dunk on a rim that doesn't move, it's just a static piece of
bash
steel.
Your hand.
You just have a lot of like issues with that. Yeah.
Okay. Has anyone ever dunked in a way that like snapped the?
Oh. Yes.
Snap the rim right off.
Yes, they have.
Okay.
I have to show you then.
These are the sort of inane sports questions that I like asking Jim. Like we were watching football once and I was like, has anyone ever hurt themselves just by like celebrating a touchdown? You were like, oh yeah.
Here's a video called Shaq Breaking Backboards.
Plural? Oh, he's not even in the NBA yet.
So you'd have a lot of that where the rim would just break. Yeah.
Oh my God.
He tore the entire hoop down in that one.
Let me see your best.
Oh my God, the glass broke and it fell right on his face.
Is that all you got?
And then as Scott was starting, Bowie was coming off the bench as Hill follows and almost and does.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's collapsing. It's fully.
How strong is he? Well, I think this backboard company will attest to it.
I feel like Shaq's hanging on the rim a little bit.
Oh, he's totally leaning
like,
into this. This became like the thing you wanted to see.
Oh my
is like
God.
Shaq wrecking a hoop.
This is so funny.
Hill puts it on the floor and stops it.
I love. Oh my God. This is dangerous. People are sitting under there.
So that's why they needed to improve.
I feel like at that time when Shaq was playing and he was doing that. Can you imagine like the crews who are like setting up the court and they're like, you guys, Shaq's in town tonight.
Don't ruin our hoop.
No, Shaq's in town tonight. We need to like reinforce, get some sandbags. We gotta reinforce
Get the backup hoop in the wings, ready to go.
I love the one, like, it's really funny when they like shatter or like break, but the one where the hoop just like very slowly just collapsed down.
Yeah, on itself. It was like, nope. Okay, back to the book. In the section called The Practice of Acceptance, Jackson talks about balancing his masculine and feminine sides, especially when it came to showing compassion for his kids and, in coaching. Mm-hmm. He learned this from his second wife, June. He talks about healing the split between feminine and masculine heart and mind as an essential part of his growth as a human being. I wrote here, it's a bit of a weird sexist way to talk about it, sort of a classic male gaze thing to think that like men's are the minds and women are the emotions. But that aside, I do think the sentiment of what he's saying is true, and it's very like 90s.
Yeah, I think if he were writing this, is he still alive? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think if you were writing this now, you can't really get away with being like, yeah, we all have to wrestle with the masculine and feminine because like gender's a construct, whatever. But yeah, I think the sentiment is overall right of like not being afraid as a man to do things that are traditionally seen as more female, like have emotions.
Yeah. I also wrote down that like men need to be way more compassionate, especially in like business or work settings is what he's getting at.
Yeah.
And yeah, like please.
Yeah, please. I'm begging you.
He writes that sometimes a firm hand is needed, but usually the most important leadership quality is just listening without judgment, or what Buddhists call bare attention. Mm-hmm. Just being able to be like, what are my, reports or whatever in an office setting, like concerned about, and what are they actually saying? Not just like, here's what I think.
Or like, maybe before I fire off this email, I should take a second to see if it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings the way I worded it.
So in Zen, it is said that the gap between accepting things the way they are and wishing them to be otherwise is the 1/10 of an inch of a difference between heaven and hell, which, yes, it is.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. 100%.
I do really relate to that. Almost every time I just like have an idea about how something's going to go, which is something I do all the time. Like I like to plan things out and I'm very like, oh, this is how this is going to be. And here's the directions to the restaurant we're going to, whatever. And if it like doesn't go right, then you're like thrown into chaos. So you really have to, at least for me, like be like, don't think that way. Things can happen.
The illusion,
get there.
The illusion of control is a hell of a drug.
Yeah. That's one thing I'm noticing, even just meditating a little bit again, is like the ability to be able to be like, if nothing else, like have multiple moments throughout your day where you just kind of get back to that place where you're like, oh, I'm just sitting here. All this other stuff is just there to like try to guide me, but I need to sort through it.
I always, during my like periods of time where I do more meditating, I always like go back to, I think my dad told me this because my dad fucked around a little bit with the same kind of stuff that Phil Jackson's dealing with. I remember there were a lot of John Kabat-Zinn books in the house.
Oh yeah, I looked up Kabat-Zinn for this.
Yeah, wherever you go, there you are. Yeah. I think my dad still meditates, actually. Like it has served him really well throughout his life, but I've had, anxiety, OCD, etc. my whole life. And my dad tried to be helpful to me by like teaching me some meditative practices. And the one that really stuck with me was the idea of like, you are the mountain and like everything else are just kind of like clouds swirling around the mountain, of like you're unchanging. And so all these like usually just made up thoughts, not actual things that happen, are just swirling around you. And I'm like, that's a visual I can use and reuse.
I think they used that on Headspace.
Yeah, probably.
They made little like animations. I remember when that
guy
first came out.
The Australian guy with the soothing voice, or is he British?
I think he's Australian.
Yeah.
And he says, all right, we're just going to have you sit down, close your eyes.
Oh my God, this is uncanny.
Take a nice deep breath in. Take a nice deep breath out. Hear those kiwis? No, sorry. Okay. Next, he talks about coaching in Puerto Rico, where he didn't speak the language and the environment was rowdy and he needed to remain calm and focus on his principles that got him there. And he recalls a dressing room that nobody wanted to go into because of giant tarantulas, which he was terrified of spiders, but he went in there to just meditate once, and people were like, don't go in there, man.
This is spider room.
And he saw them, and he had like a moment where he was really frustrated with this job in Puerto Rico or whatever. It wasn't working for him. He was frustrated with his team, and this moment of like facing his fear of the spiders made him like calm for the rest of the time, because he was like, well, that was like one of my biggest fears. And just having that moment sitting there in the gym, in the place where he's already struggling with all these spiders around him, he was like, okay, I can just not, like, he had a meditative moment there.
Yeah.
And came out of it like refreshed.
He was just like sitting, reaching nirvana, and
seeing his fear in front of him.
And a big tarantula came up and was like, hey man, it's going to be all right.
I got 8 legs.
And 1 heart.
Sometimes I wish I had 8 hearts.
And Phil was like, can you help me feel better about basketball? And the tarantula was like, nah.
Oh man, I got 8 legs. I don't know what that is. I could dribble 8 little balls though. Maybe. And Phil was like, yeah, you do that. All right, bye. So with the platoons, he did end up winning a championship in that league. But after that, he was even questioning whether or not he wanted to keep doing basketball. He like took one of those career interest tests, and he said that he got housekeeper, trail guide, and counselor, and lawyer. So he chose to go to law school for the money.
Yeah, I mean, if you're comparing the financial output of all of those jobs, I guess.
He was like, I didn't think I would be able to live being a trail guide, so
It's funny. I don't remember what my results were. I took one of those in high school, but I do remember my results similarly being like, I don't know, 3 jobs that are probably not going to make me any money, and then like 1 real job that I'm not interested in.
Yeah. But right before he could go to law school and do that whole thing, the Bulls called him. And this is where the chapter changes to a chapter called Selflessness in Action.
Okay.
The Bulls were struggling to figure out how to play with and complement Michael Jordan. When Phil Jackson arrived as an assistant coach, he immediately felt that he needed to find ways to open up the offense around MJ. He described basketball of the time as very stagnant power basketball, where basically you throw a ball to a big guy who would try to score, or you do like a screen and try to dunk. And there wasn't much ball movement, and it was very one-on-one based. And he makes some comments about it being street ball and not real basketball. So Phil's a little bit old school in his thinking there, but he also had a point. Basketball was very throw it to a big guy, try to dunk. And he'd probably still criticize the modern game. Everyone of a certain era criticizes the modern game for being too much like street ball, which I think is so dumb.
I mean, there's a layer of racism there.
Oh yeah. not even veiled.
Yeah, no.
Tex Winter, a former coach of Kansas State and another assistant coach for the Bulls, who was brought in by the Bulls management because they really liked his work with Kansas State. So Tex and Phil are together on the Bulls staff, and Tex really liked to play with sort of a motion offense that he called the triangle offense, and Phil Jackson really took to this.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
So page 87 in the book, I'll have you read a little bit, is about the triangle offense. And here, I'll just have you read a little bit of this.
Okay. Starting here?
Yeah, the triangle offense is, if there's one thing that Phil Jackson's known for in sort of basketball, it's this.
Okay. The triangle offense is best described as 5-man Tai Chi. The basic idea is to orchestrate the flow of movement in order to lure the defense off balance and create a myriad of openings on the floor. The system gets its name from one of the most common patterns of movement, the sideline triangle. Example, as Scottie Pippen moves the ball up court, he and 2 other players form a triangle on the right side of the floor about 15 feet apart from each other. Steve Kerr in the corner, Luke Longley in the post, and Scottie along the sideline. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan hovers around the top of the key, and Tony Kukoc positions himself opposite Pippen on the other side of the floor. Next, Pippen passes the ball into Longley, and everybody goes into a series of complex coordinated moves depending on how the defense responds. The point is not to go head-to-head with the defense, but to toy with the defenders and trick them into overextending themselves. That means thinking and moving in unison as a group and being acutely aware at any given moment of what's happening on the floor. Executed properly, the system is virtually unstoppable because there are no set plays and the defense can't predict what's going to happen next. If the defense tries to prevent one move, the players will adjust instinctively and start another series of cuts and passes that often lead to a better shot.
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of understand.
I'm going to show you a little bit of Phil talking about the triangle in a video for ESPN Plus because I think it shows it better.
Okay.
One of the options in this offense that's kind of like to say that it's kind of like jazz. You can take off on the various themes and run your own little music run as you want to, as long as you still know what the melody is. As you come back to what the basic thematic structure is of the song. Triangle offense is a little bit like that. Here you see a sequence where we say if you get jammed up going to the corner, guards going to the corner, strong side fill is what we call this. Kukoc has the ball. And there's a little bit of traffic element there. He's got the freedom to make a middle penetration drive. Harper extends out. Tony's able to get all the way through this mess and get to the basket.
But you get the idea that it's about sort of setting up these little triangles on the side. And then when you pass to one place, you cut. Like you said, there's just different cuts and things you can do and not set plays. Like, here's this action we're going to do. And that's kind of what everybody does now, some version of that.
Yeah, I was
nowadays.
about
But
to
this
say.
is very, like, revolutionary, where it's like, we don't care who shoots the shot. It's just about getting someone open.
Yeah.
Like, whoever's going to get the best shot, it's more about passing. So, like, you have that little triangle action where you pass to the corner. Maybe this guy screens down, this guy pops out. You have an option to cut behind on that. So, because they don't know what they're running, the defense doesn't know what they're running.
Right. This is actually interesting for me because I've often had the question of, like, how do you get from, like, okay, we're drilling all these plays, we know all these plays, and then you get on the court and, like, it's one thing in football where you can, like, okay, we're getting set up for this play, we're set up, we're going to try and run this play, and then, like, the defense can stop it, whatever. Obviously, you can adjust on the fly, but I feel like with basketball, to me, I'm like, aren't they always adjusting on the fly?
Yeah.
Like, how can they possibly cleanly execute a play? Because the moment that the ball is in play, like, it's anything could happen.
I think this is such a thing for me with watching basketball. There's a lot of, like, older people, like my parents' age or grandpa's age or whatever, who talk about current NBA and they're like, I hate it. It's not structured and regimented and the roles don't exist anymore, and you know, there's
Like
not
point
big guys
guard,
and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, if you even start to think about what they're actually doing, it's so insanely skilled, and all of the stuff is like instinctual. Like they're learning and processing these offenses that are essentially a series of moves that you can do, and you need to have a Rolodex in your head, like hundreds deep, on all the little situations that could happen.
And to have that relationship with, like, your teammates where, like, it, like you said, it's like jazz. I mean, like, you hear the same thing about, like, good improv is like jazz, you know what I mean? And what people are really getting at when they say that is that everyone is just on the same page, of the same mind, and, like, fully aware and adaptable at any time. So to be able to be on the court, look at where your teammates are positioned, look at where the defense is positioned, know all of the, like, play options in your head, and then for people to be able to execute that without some guy, without Phil Jackson stepping onto the court, or without Michael Jordan being like, okay, Scotty, you do this, you do that. Like, if you're able to just sort of, like, fluidly move and be aware of each other, like, obviously you would be, like, unstoppable, especially if that's not what people are used to.
But in order to do that, you really have to be on the same page, because all it takes is one person trying to do it themselves to just ruin the whole vibe.
Right, which is also the same for an improv show.
So as the chapter goes on, Phil begins to implement the triangle offense and drill its principles into his players. And he starts to see that eventually he can get to a place where coaching actually becomes easy. The players know the system, and he's coached them so heavily in practice on all their options within the system that the only thing left to do is just let the players play. So Phil would often be seen just sitting down, pacing, very chill on the sidelines, because he's like, I have prepared my guys to do this. No amount of yelling, play calling, unless it's like a specific situation happens and needs to draw something specific. But
well, I bet that you feel more like you're able to relax when Michael Jordan's on your team. Like,
This
let's
too.
not discount that element of it, that
Yeah.
the greatest basketball player of all time is on your team. So yeah, maybe you do feel like you could sit down and have a drink.
Yeah, I didn't write this down here, but one thing I remember from the book is he said that Michael often would say that the triangle would get them to the third quarter, and then he would get them to the win. So after being named the Bulls head coach, again, we're kind of getting to where this all started at the top. Phil's main goal was to come up with like a team vision, sort of incorporating his Zen practices from the platoons and all that kind of stuff. And he couldn't do all of those things because it's the NBA. Like he couldn't have everyone have the same salary or that kind of stuff. But he could try to implement as much of that groupthink as possible. And he said that he learned sort of his ways of doing this from the Lakota.
Native Americans.
Like they had a lot of those principles.
Okay.
Team, we before me, and sort of visualizing a dream state where everything is possible. So that's what he tried to create in that room.
Okay.
This like place where everyone could meditate. He actually had them meditate.
Nice.
Like players and stuff.
Nice.
Before we go further on the Lakota stuff, I want to play a little video from Ted Ed about the Lakota Empire, just as a tangent, because I think it's always good to remember our relationship with Native Americans.
Yeah, I think that's
is
important
pretty
as well.
In 1876, exactly 100 years after the Lakotas' arrival, gold prospectors occupied the sacred Black Hills. For many Lakotas, this was the final straw. Following a vision by Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse led Lakota forces to decisively defeat the Americans in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. After this victory, the Lakotas faced an even graver threat. Wagon travel and railroad construction had decimated buffalo populations, and they faced starvation. To survive, they moved onto reservations, where the authorities murdered Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse and attempted to dismantle their culture, prohibiting the Sundance on reservations. The Lakotas started a protest movement called the Ghost Dance. Alarmed by this resistance, in 1890, the U.S. Army massacred hundreds of Lakotas, many of them women and children, at Wounded Knee Creek. Today, Lakotas continue to fight for their culture and their land. In 2016, they drew supporters worldwide to protest construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline through their reservation, continuing a long history of resistance to a government known for breaking its promises.
Anyway.
Yeah.
History lesson
Yep.
that I probably didn't get in school or only got a little bit of.
Just thinking, I remember a lot of the like names of people and like names of battles and whatnot, and I don't know that I didn't get these details in APUS.
No.
No.
And yeah, you heard about like Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and these names. Like, these are just warriors. Like when we were taught that, I don't think we were taught very forcefully how much we just like were massacring people.
No.
Yeah.
It always came off as like, it wasn't great, but we had to because
We're in the way.
America. Yeah. So anyway, Phil Jackson.
Anyway, Phil Jackson. Pulling from the Lakota, he sort of had a saying, fish don't fly, birds don't swim, meaning know your role, like know the environment where you do best and what you can and can't do.
Yeah. Play to your strengths.
Play to your strengths. Phil has taught clinics with NBA players at Lakota reservations after this. That's something he's always been passionate about. His style of offense felt very Lakota because they believe that their main goal in life is to realize that they are one with everything and try to live that way. And like that's what Phil wanted in basketball and in life. All right, a couple more chapters. The next one is being aware is more important than being smart. To reach enlightenment, all you need to do is chop wood and carry water, meaning do each thing with all of your attention and good things will happen.
Oh boy, I can't do anything with all my attention. I would be like, okay, I'm going to start chopping the wood. Oh no, I need to actually like carry the water. Should I do that first? I thought I was going to take a shower earlier than this today. Maybe I should shower first and then I'm going to get sweaty when I chop the wood. Let's just chop the wood. Okay, we're chopping the wood. I'm really thirsty. You know what? I should have gotten the water. I'm going to get the water now.
That's exhausting.
That's what it's like in my head all day long. I will say to Jim, like Jim will like ask me to do something and I'll be like, yes. And I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do it, but it could get done in 5 minutes or it could get done in 8 hours, depending on what I run into on the way.
So yeah, here Phil talks about how when he was a player, his biggest obstacle was his own racing thoughts. He had learned from religion to always be sorting through his thoughts for impure or good thoughts.
Yeah.
This is bad, this is good. And I wrote down, my God, this is me. And then he writes, although we maintain high standards, we do everything possible to prevent players from feeling personally responsible when the team loses, which is amazing.
That is amazing.
I wish that was a little bit more just in general in our culture.
It never will be because it's not as good of a story. You know,
No.
like in a post-game interview with members of the losing team, it's cringy, but it's a much more interesting thing to watch like one sad guy who
Yeah.
probably made a bad choice or
Take the blame.
whatever. You always have the reporters being like, do you think you made the wrong choice in that last thing? And then it cost everybody the game. So like, we're never gonna get away from that. Like, I would love to hear a player respond to that and be like, as collectively as a team,
Yeah.
I think we all didn't score that last foul shot.
So the next chapter is called Aggressiveness Without Anger. Phil learned firsthand as a player that anger was bad and that it could be used against angry players. He'd egg on certain players so that they'd foul out of games and trash talk and sort of like reverse use that psychology. He talks about the extreme violence in the NBA, especially in the 80s. Teams had enforcers who were there to take people out. And this is actually why they started instituting fines for flagrant fouls for such behavior, because people were just bashing people.
Enforcers meaning like people on the team who just like
Yeah, like
hit
they would
people
just
too hard.
usually be just some big guy, maybe not even that good at basketball. That would just
He's the bodyguard.
yeah, they're really good at rebounding and defense, but maybe not offense, but just like bashing people and trying to set a tone that like we don't, fuck around. The Pistons were super aggro, and they were kind of one of the Bulls' main rivals during this time, and they were always like beating up on the Bulls.
And like a flagrant foul is if you're like violent.
Yeah. There actually is one example of Michael sort of getting it that he talks about too in the book. When they won their first title that year, the Disney people wanted to do like a I'm going to Disney World MJ commercial, and he wouldn't do it unless the whole team also got to say it.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
First NBA championship. What are you going to do next?
We're going to Disney World. Yeah.
So though he said it, the team was there.
Sweet. Very sweet.
The next chapter is called Invisible Leader. Phil writes, the prevailing myth in sports and business is that managing from the top down and keeping your charges constantly guessing about their status is an effective way to stimulate creativity. And he disagrees with that.
Yeah, I do too.
That is... when I read that, I had to write it down word for word because I was like, this is how I felt about like every corporate-y job I've ever done.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, we're going to keep you guessing and on your toes, and that'll make you produce better work.
I can't.
No.
I don't want to be on my toes. I'm tired. My calves are tired.
Phil talks about an example just from people in his life. He describes a woman that he knew suggesting management be more compassionate to employees who they hoped would stay and work longer because of that. But instead they hired a bunch of, quote, rock stars, hoping the existing people would be afraid that their jobs would go away because these new rock stars came in. So it's just intimidating people and causing drama instead of security.
Yeah. People will do better work for you when they like you and feel respected.
Yeah. So this is where this book sort of becomes like a business book. Like people can glean insights that they take to their tech startup.
Oh, yes.
About how they should lead, but I don't think they're actually reading it and taking that away.
No, they're doing what I did, which is buy it and feel like you made like a decision about how your life is now.
Yeah. In 1991 and 92, the system was finally really churning, and Phil could do what he always wanted to do, which was be an invisible coach. Just create the system and the players will coach themselves. He made the feuding players one time during the middle of the season have a Super Bowl party in MJ's room on a road trip that bonded them. He just talked about moments like that where he realized the team dynamic was getting pulled in a different direction or another because someone was like talking shit in the media about their teammate or something, and he would have to come in and be like, hey guys, remember, this is why we're doing this.
We're all going to eat snacks and watch the Super Bowl, and you're all going to be nice to each other.
Yeah. It's funny how like sometimes his like solutions that he remembers are just very simple. Like, yeah, and I threw a party for our team and they all liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you do like a nice bonding thing and that helps.
Sometimes just a little morale boost is all anybody needs.
He also talks here about the Buddhist principle of skillful means and how it applies to dealing with problems. His example is a parent who sends a kid to bed for spilling milk instead of handing them a sponge is not practicing skillful means. Meaning like just punishing for the sake of punishing with no reason or learning is not good.
This is like a big part of like gentle parenting now, and which I talk to my sister about a lot because I have twin 3-year-old nieces. Like a big part of gentle parenting is like kids are kids. They're like, they haven't developed fully, like full brains yet. They don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know that what they're doing is good or bad. And so like punishing them without an explanation or without like working with them to sort of like process through what they did. Like it's the same for adults.
Yeah.
It's like, it just doesn't really work.
No. Nearing the end of this chapter, Phil describes a situation where they sort of had to be zen on the court. In their series against Phoenix, a player was reading from a book called The Jordan Rules that came out around that time that basically detailed their first season through some sources and made Michael Jordan look bad and like a sort of ball hog, like sort of too big of a personality. Anyway, it just painted Michael in a bad light. And a fan was reading really loudly sections from the book right behind their bench.
To troll
them. So he talked about things like that where they had to zone in and just not
pay attention
to the outside noise. So the title of that book, The Jordan Rules, was what the Pistons called their set of rules for defending Jordan because they had to try to come up with a plan because nobody could stop this guy in his prime. And their plan was the Jordan Rules, just like hit him, like try to physically basically injure him.
Yeah.
Detroit had Jordan rules just for Michael.
We had to do everything from a physicality standpoint to stop him.
I don't know how he came out of it alive.
When he was in the air, we had no shot.
You have to stop him before he takes flight
because you know he's not human.
Michael Jordan foul.
Here again, the implementation of the Jordan rule.
Chuck Dingley. This is a Jordan rule. Every time you go to the fucking basket, put him on the ground.
As soon as he steps in the paint, hit him.
When he comes to the basket, he ain't gonna dunk. We're gonna hit you, and you're gonna be on the ground.
Jordan is still down.
We tried to physically hurt Michael.
Jordan had no place to go. Robert.
No one is accusing me of being Michael Jordan, but if I were, I'd be like, no, I don't want to get hurt.
They showed Dennis Rodman there too. He wasn't on the Bulls yet. He played on the Pistons before that.
Oh, no
against
way.
Them. Yeah.
Okay, I was confused about that because I knew Rodman was on the Bulls.
Rodman joined the Bulls in Michael's second act.
I
see. In those later ones.
I gotcha.
So
then, he was trying to physically harm Michael before he then became his teammate.
Yeah.
I bet Phil Jackson had to really go to work on that friendship afterward.
Yeah. And there's a chapter called Coaching Michelangelo. Now we're getting right near the end here.
Okay.
Even after 2 championships, Jordan still had work to do on playing for his team, not for himself. And he learned the importance of this, saying that he had to actively engage and hang out with his teammates to get to know them and show them that he wasn't above them. I like this kind of as a reminder that sometimes you have to actively engage in order to keep like groups together, which is something I feel like failed at in my own
you mean
life.
Like friendship?
Yeah. Like it was a good reminder reading this, like, oh yeah, like Michael Jordan was doing it because he needed to relate to people who were considered lesser than him or whatever. He didn't want there to be like a power dynamic, but in general, like he had to make an effort to reach out to groups of people.
Yeah.
It's
funny because it's like it's easier now than it ever has been because there's so many different ways to communicate with people and get back in touch with like friends and whatnot, but there's also so many ways to just stay home and speak to no one.
Oh my God. Like do a podcast.
Yeah.
Phil recalls a time when Scott Williams needed 5 more rebounds to make his bonus quota. I just wanted to mention that because it's a fun thing to mention bonus quotas. So sometimes players in a lot of sports have like stats that they need to meet by the end of the year to get more money.
Oh.
So like built into their contract is like certain amount of points, certain amount of rebounds.
Interesting.
And so when seasons get near the end, sometimes it becomes about, especially in football, you'll see like a graphic like these are the players that need to do things today in order to get paid huge sums more of money.
So how much can they really take that into account though? Because they have to do whatever's best for like the team and winning, right?
It kind of goes against everything that Phil was saying. And this is why he brought it up, because he's so team focused and this is a very individual thing. And the story was more about Scott Williams not talking to anybody about why he was doing that. But when he said, hey, Phil, I need to get 5 rebounds to make this money, Phil was able to be like, I understand that's why you're doing this now. I will put you in a position to just get those. And he did.
Nice.
So it's like, just talk about why you're doing it and don't just do the selfish thing.
Open communication, man. It solves so many problems.
So at the end of this chapter, Jordan retires to go play for the White Sox. So we've come full circle. He said when basketball wasn't fun anymore, he wasn't going to play it. But then he goes there, doesn't have that much success. There's like lockouts and stuff in baseball, and he comes back to the Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
But Phil does document how he did really like that team in the year where Jordan left because they had to show that they could do this offense and stuff like that without him.
Yeah.
And really like it was about the team.
Did they have an overall successful season?
Yeah, they were good, but they didn't win a championship.
Sure.
But then Jordan came back and they won 3 more. Yeah. So that's sort of my walkthrough of Sacred Hoops. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I would love to share a joint with Phil Jackson.
Even just hearing him in that little clip, doesn't he seem like pretty chill?
Yeah, he seems like a pretty chill guy. Here's what I will say. Taking into account the fact that he, his career started in the 70s. So, he's from an older generation. He's definitely like a white guy who, is fucking around with some Eastern thought and some Native American thought and like bringing some different ideologies, some different non-white ideologies into his life. And I love that for him, especially after his Pentecostal upbringing. I would say that like if Phil Jackson were doing this today, he would probably get reality checked a few times for being appropriative. But I think the core of what he's trying to take from these different ideologies is like be a good person who wants to like be mindful and aware and find a way to work well with other people and be communicative and not be narcissistic and self-interested. So I think it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
I really, really do. I think he seems like a cool guy. It's why I bought the book to begin with.
That's right. And here it is again. If you're watching, holding up the book, Sacred Hoops.
Yeah.
Get it wherever you get books, maybe Amazon.
But he seems like a chill hang. I would hang out with him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cool. Well, thank you for listening to this episode about Sacred Hoops and Phil Jackson. We'll be back with another episode in a couple weeks.
If you miss us in the meantime, there's a whole bunch of episodes on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/SKDKpod. You can subscribe for $3 and get extra audio episodes every month. For $5, you get extra audio and extra video. And if you want to give us more than that, we're not going to say no.
Nope. All right, bye.
Bye.
Do